From our perspective here on Earth, the sun looks the same as it has for many, many years. But folks, we are getting word from NASA and NOAA that we have officially reached the peak of solar cycle 25. Now, this is what the sun looks like to NASA. Multiple coronal mass ejections, multiple geomagnetic storms. It almost looks like a party on the sun. But how can they determine that we are at the peak of solar cycle 25? Let's take a close look. Between 2020 and 2022, there was an exponential increase in the number of sunspots on the sun, but that has since leveled off over the last 2 years, and this is similar to previous solar cycles. So, they make the determination that we are at the peak of the cycle, but they will not know which date is the peak for the next year, because we are going to continue to have an increase in the number of sunspots, just not the same frequency as we did a couple of years ago. So what does that mean for us here on Earth? Well, when you're at the peak of a solar cycle, there's an increased probability and an increased frequency of the northern lights, especially those G4, G5 level storms. So it's possible that we could have several instances of seeing the aurora borealis this far south here in southern West Virginia, but it does not just happen at the peak of the cycle. NASA and NOAA say it can happen as you go down off the peak into the solar minimum as well.
But they can continue, and we might experience it some even later in the cycle.
A couple of examples. The Halloween storms in 2003 occurred 3.5 years after solar maximum, and the largest radiation storm we had in that cycle occurred in January of 2005, which was 5 years after solar maximum. So absolutely correct. We're seeing the peak now, but we could get them at any time.
All right, so we might see the aurora borealis every now and then, right? There's a lot of information that has to be communicated, though, between NASA and NOAA to not only FEMA, but also airline pilots, because these light shows impact communication systems and GPS as well.
Last week and back in May, for example, high-frequency communications with aircraft were significantly impacted, mostly again at the higher latitudes. But last week we were advising FEMA and other emergency responders that yes, be ready, be prepared, because the communications you are relying on, and indeed GPS, those signals may be degraded.
Looking down the road, NASA predicts that we will be in a solar minimum between the years 2030 and 2032, and the peak of the next solar cycle, that is solar cycle 26, will likely occur several years thereafter. Of course, we here at WOAY will keep you abreast of any aurora borealis or northern light shows that could be seen this far south, as we are at the peak of solar cycle 25 right now. Chief Meteorologist Chad Merrill for Newswatch.